Okay, so here's the tray, passable TIG welding, not show car finish, but it'll be adequate for the job. So I think you can see the general profile of the pan, and here's where the two mounting points will be. So the pan's going to go in the middle. So I've got to mark this out and figure out how I'm going to cut an aperture here in the top. So obviously I've got a 50mm rail under here, so I've got to be a little bit behind that, and I've got to figure out how I'm going to cut that aperture in the top sheet. So I'll work on that next. Okay, so I've got the pan welded in and I've finished sanded it, so I just want to talk about some of the problems I had and how you might address them if you're doing a similar job. Main problem being, well, what I found was this 2mm aluminium really starts to move, especially near the edges where there's no room for the heat to dissipate, so the heat all builds up and you get quite a bit of distortion because of the amount of heat. So it's not so bad at the back here because this acts as a heat sink, this back piece, and so do the sides to a certain extent. But on this front edge here, I've got quite a bit of movement, and I've even broken, actually there's another one, 2 rivets clean snapped out. So I riveted this down to hold it in place while I welded around the perimeter. From the top, I've done it at the bottom and I re-welded at the top just so I had a smooth surface here, and I've knocked the welds down with a just a flat disc, sanding disc, 40 grit, just to knock the tops of the welds off, and then I've just progressively sanded it finer with an 80, and then I've used poly flap disc on the grinder as well, coarse and then a fine, just to smooth off as much as I wanted to. And you'll be able to see, I think, in the video, you can see some of these lines aren't straight. That's just the unevenness induced by the welds. And once I've done that, I've just used steel wool, coarse graded steel wool, and gotten this sort of semi-brushed look. Now you can still see the sanding marks, you might be able to see them in the camera, but I can definitely see them all here. But I'm not going to lose sleep over that. This is just a tray to catch swarf and coolant, and then it'll drain back out of here into the drum. So probably didn't adequately control the heat on this thin edge here, so I'm going to put a couple of extra rivets in here. I've tried to hammer it down a little bit because it's stretched or it's grown, so you need to shrink it back to get it to go flat. So I've hit it a few times with a mallet and a piece of timber on top just to try and stretch it down, but there's nowhere for it to go because it's sitting on the rail here, so it's only going to be limited as to what I can achieve here. So I mean, I really could drill all these rivets out, take it off and shrink this edge a bit, but I'm probably still going to get some waves in it, and it's not a show car, it's just a drip tray. So I'm going to progress now. I've spent, I reckon, 10 hours to cut the aluminium, weld it into a tray, weld it into this base, finish it off. So it's a lot of work, and I hope it's worth it. But it was a good exercise, even just for learning and improving my TIG skills with aluminium. So at this point I'm going to put the studs back in and I really want to get the lathe off my workbench and onto the stand because I've got other jobs I need to do, and I actually need the job. I need the lathe for a customer paying job at the moment, so I really need to get the lathe recommissioned and running. So yeah, a lot of work for this very simple looking tray, but I hope it'll serve the purpose that I designed it for. So let's just keep going and get the lathe back on here.